Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we are looking north to America's neighbor, Canada, and the somewhat rocky situation they're in right now with their new prime minister and the trade war that's been brewing with the U.S.
Yeah, it's a pretty intense time to be stepping into that leadership role with a lot of eyes on Canada right now.
Absolutely. And just to set the scene for our listeners in case they haven't been glued to the news
Mhm.
lately, Justin Trudeau stepped down, which led to Mark Carney being sworn in as prime minister just this past Friday.
Big shoes to fill for sure.
For sure, and he's walking right into this. Well, it's more than just a disagreement with the U.S., right? I mean, Trump has slapped those 25% tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum a while back, and it seems like there are more tariffs on the way.
Yeah, those initial tariffs were definitely a blow. And the rumors of more to come on a whole range of goods starting April 2nd, that's got a lot of Canadian businesses on edge for sure. And then you throw in that comment Trump made about annexing Canada. It's not exactly helping to calm things down.
Oh, man. Talk about adding fuel to the fire, right? Like, I know Canada and the U.S. have always had this, friendly rivalry going on, but annexing an entire country, that's a whole other level.
It definitely struck a nerve with Canadians. I mean, Canadians are known for being polite, but there's been a pretty strong backlash, folks boycotting U.S. products, some even booing the American national anthem at sporting events.
Yeah, you don't see that kind of thing every day up north.
It definitely shows how much this has riled people up.
It's interesting, though, because this whole trade war thing seems to have given the Liberal Party a bit of a boost. I mean, they were facing some pretty tough times politically before all this, but now it seems like they're rallying around the flag, so to speak.
Yeah, it's kind of a strange twist, right? Like Trump's actions have inadvertently given them a bit of an advantage. I mean, they might even come out of this stronger than before.
So let's talk about Mark Carney for a second. This guy has a serious resume, right? Former governor of the Bank of Canada, steered them through the 2008 financial crisis, then governor of the Bank of England during all the Brexit chaos, even a stint at Goldman Sachs. Talk about a high-pressure career path.
Absolutely. And now he's facing this whole trade war situation head on, demanding respect for Canadian sovereignty as a condition for even talking with Trump.
He's not pulling any punches, that's for sure. But it makes you wonder, can he actually pull this off? I mean, he's got the economic know-how, but this is politics. It's a whole different ballgame.
It is, and even former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, who's seen his fair share of political battles, said, while Carney has international respect, there's no magic solution when dealing with someone like Trump.
It's like trying to predict the weather, right?
Yeah.
You never know which way the wind's going to blow.
Exactly. And to make things even more interesting, Carney's expected to call a general election soon.
Wow. Talk about jumping into the deep end.
It really makes you think about, the history between the two countries. Like they've always had this, close relationship, almost like family. And to see it strain like this it's a bit worrying.
Yeah, it's like watching a close friendship go through a really rough patch.
Yeah.
But instead of just, hurt feelings, we're talking about potential economic fallout. Like,
Yeah.
what happens if this doesn't get resolved?
Well, imagine like a slow but steady unraveling of the economic ties that bind them, right? Their economies are so deeply intertwined. I mean, Canada is the U.S.'s biggest trading partner, and the U.S. is a huge market for Canadian goods.
Yeah.
So if this keeps going, we could be looking at job losses on both sides of the border, higher prices for consumers, supply chains getting all messed up.
Yeah, it's easy to forget just how much the two countries rely on each other for so many things. And it's not just about the numbers either, right? We're talking about people's livelihoods, families, businesses, whole communities could be affected by this.
Exactly. And, beyond just the economic impact, there's also the risk of damaging that social fabric that connects the two countries. Canadians and Americans share so much in terms of values, history, even a love for hockey, even if we cheer for different teams. But this kind of conflict could create resentment and distrust that could take years to overcome.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah.
So this is a big deal, not just for politicians, but for everyday people on both sides of the border. What about Canada's reputation on the world stage? How does all this impact their standing?
Well, Canada has always prided itself on being this, mediator, a voice of reason in global affairs. But if other countries see them being pushed around by a more powerful neighbor, it could really diminish their credibility and influence. It's like trying to be the peacemaker in a family feud, but one side isn't playing fair.
So this whole situation really has so many layers to it. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
But you know what I find really interesting is Mark Carney himself. He might be a political newcomer, but all his experience with financial crises and economic turmoil, that could be exactly what Canada needs right now.
Yeah, it's almost like he's been training for this his whole career.
Exactly. He's dealt with high-stakes situations before, so he's not a stranger to pressure. But the question is it enough? Can he outmaneuver someone like Trump, who seems to play by his own rules?
Right. It's not just about standing firm. It's about finding a solution that works for both sides.
Yeah.
Carney will need to be tough, but also pragmatic, appeal to logic, but also be ready to play hardball when necessary.
And all this while gearing up for an election.
Yeah.
How much do you think this whole trade war will play into the campaign?
Oh, it's going to be front and center for sure. This has really awakened a sense of national unity and concern in Canada. Voters are going to be looking for a leader who can protect their jobs, their way of life, their sense of national pride. This election could very well come down to how Canadians see their relationship with the U.S. moving forward.
So it's like a fork in the road. Do they try to appease Trump and hope he backs down? Or do they take a stronger stance, even if it means things could get worse before they get better? It's a defining moment for Canada.
It really is. And the choices made in the next few weeks and months will have ripple effects far beyond just economics and politics. It's about the future of the U.S. Canada relationship and the values that underpin it.
Okay, so for our listeners who are following this situation closely, what should they be paying attention to?
Yeah.
What are some signs that Carney's strategy is working or not working?
Well, there are a few key things to watch for. First, pay attention to the tone and substance of what's being said by both sides. Is there any softening of positions, any hints of compromise, or is it just more of the same back and forth accusations?
So less talking past each other, more actual dialogue and problem solving.
Exactly. Secondly, look for concrete actions that signal things are de-escalating. Are tariffs being rolled back? Are negotiations starting up again? Those are tangible signs of progress.
Actions speak louder than words, especially in a situation like this. What else should our listeners keep an eye on?
Watch how other countries are reacting. Are they supporting Canada's position? Are they putting pressure on the U.S. to back down? International support could be a game changer for Canada.
It's almost like a global popularity contest, but with much higher stakes.
You could say that. But while the day-to-day drama is definitely captivating, it's important to remember the bigger picture. This isn't just about tariffs or trade balances. It's about the very principles of national sovereignty, respect between nations, and the rules that govern the global order.
So this is Canada at a crossroads. What happens next is anyone's guess.
That's the truth of it. The decisions made in the coming weeks and months will determine not only the economic and political future of Canada, but also its place in the world. It's a pivotal moment.
Okay, so we've talked about the trade war, the whole annexation thing, and basically what a pressure cooker this is for Mark Carney as he steps into this new role. It's got to be a lot to handle, especially for someone who's new to the political scene. What do you think are going to be his biggest hurdles right out of the gate?
Well, uniting Canadians has to be top of the list, right?
Yeah.
This whole situation has really brought some of those simmering tensions to the surface. You've got those who are saying, hey, let's try to smooth things over with Trump, take a more, conciliatory approach. And then there are those who are like, no way, we need to take a much firmer stance, even if it means things could escalate even more. Finding a way to bridge that divide and present a united front is going to be huge for him.
It's like he needs to be a political tightrope walker, balancing those competing interests without, anyone jumping ship. But can he actually win this trade war? And what would that even look like?
Yeah, I mean, defining a clear-cut victory is tough, especially with someone like Trump, who often seems to see things as very black and white, like there has to be a winner and a loser. But for Canada, I think a successful outcome would involve a few key things.
Okay, lay it on me. What would those be?
Well, first off, getting those tariffs on steel and aluminum lifted. That's a major sticking point. Second, securing a commitment from the U.S. that there won't be any further tariffs. Nobody wants to be constantly wondering what's going to be hit next. Then third, a clear and absolute recognition of Canada's sovereignty. No more talk of annexation, no more undermining their independence. And finally, I think a return to a more respectful and cooperative tone in the relationship. All that name-calling and the threats, it's just not productive.
So basically hitting the reset button and going back to a time when things were a bit more neighborly, less like squabbling siblings. But can Carney pull that off?
It's a tall order for sure. He's going to have to draw on all his experience, his economic know-how, his grasp of global finance, and his ability to build relationships. He'll need to be strategic, calculated, but also adaptable, ready to adjust his approach as things unfold.
Okay, let's play devil's advocate for a minute. What if he doesn't succeed? What if the trade war escalates, the relationship keeps getting worse, and everything just gets messier? What are the implications, not just for Canada, but for the bigger picture?
Well, that's a scenario no one wants to see, but we do have to consider it. I mean, A breakdown in the U.S. Canada relationship would send ripples throughout the global economy. These are two major players in international trade, and a conflict between them would disrupt supply chains, increase uncertainty, and could potentially even slow down global economic growth.
So for our listener who might be thinking, well, this is a bit of a spat between Canada and the U.S., why should I care? Why does this matter?
Well, it matters because the US and Canada have one of the most integrated economies in the world. What happens in one country directly affects the other. A trade war would impact businesses, consumers, investors on both sides of the border.
It's a good reminder that we're all more interconnected than we often realize.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And beyond the economic impact, there's also the symbolic significance. The US-Canada relationship has long been held up as, this model of cooperation and mutual respect between nations. If these two countries, with their shared history, their democratic values, can't find a way to work through their differences, what hope is there for resolving conflicts in other parts of the world?
It's a pretty sobering thought. So what can our listener do? Can they influence the outcome of this situation in any way?
Staying informed is a great place to start. By understanding the issues at stake and engaging in thoughtful discussions, we can help shape public opinion and encourage our leaders to pursue those constructive solutions.
Knowledge is power, right? And with that, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have. But as with any complex situation, there's always more to learn and more to explore.
So for our listeners, we'll leave you with this thought. Keep an eye on Canada. This story is far from over, and the choices made in the coming weeks and months will have a significant impact, not just on the two countries involved, but potentially on the world as a whole.
And as we watch this all unfold, let's remember the importance of dialogue, diplomacy, and a commitment to finding that common ground even when the challenges seem insurmountable.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious.